The Titanic, a British liner operated by the White Star Line, suffered a tragic fate in the North Atlantic Ocean. The ship sank after striking an iceberg during her maiden voyage from Southampton, England, to New York City. This disaster remains the deadliest peacetime sinking of an ocean liner or cruise ship. The Titanic, built by the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Northern Ireland, was an impressive vessel measuring 882 feet, 9 inches in length, with a maximum width of 92 feet, 6 inches. She had 10 decks, each with different purposes, from housing lifeboats on the boat deck to housing first-class cabins and public spaces on the promenade and lounge decks. The ship carried a diverse range of passengers, including wealthy people and numerous immigrants seeking a new life in America and Canada. Despite its significant impact on literature and film, the sinking of the Titanic remains an enigmatic event in history. Here are some of the preserved photos of the Titanic before it sank. The boy on the deck of the Titanic. In the iconic 1997 film Titanic, there is a scene showing a young boy engrossed in playing with a top on the ship's deck. Interestingly, this scene is a recreation of a real photograph taken aboard the Titanic. The photograph was captured on one of the Titanic's upper decks just days before the tragic ship met its fateful end. The date was April 11, 1912. The photograph shows a 6-year-old boy named Robert Douglas Spedden, who was happily entertained by spinning his top while his father and other passengers watched the scene. Young Robert was a first-class passenger from a wealthy family. Accompanied by his family, he was traveling on the Titanic back to his residence in Tuxedo Park, New York, after a family excursion in Algeria. But what happened to this young boy? Well, he was fast asleep when the Titanic hit the iceberg. Amid the chaos of the sinking, he briefly woke up as his nanny, Elizabeth Burns, assured him that she would take him on a trip to see the stars. It is said that Robert fell asleep again, unaware of the unfolding tragedy. When he finally woke up the next morning, he found himself in a lifeboat, having survived the calamity. Tragically, Robert's story took a fatal turn in 1915. At the tender age of 9, when he died prematurely after being hit by a car in Maine. Considering the limited number of cars on the roads at the time, his accident stands out as one of the earliest recorded car-related incidents in the state's history. The iceberg that sank the Titanic. It's widely known that the sinking of the Titanic was caused by an iceberg, but get this, just 2 days before the disaster, the captain of another ship crossing the Atlantic was lucky enough to take an incredible black and white photograph of a massive iceberg. And the most shocking thing is that it is believed to be the same iceberg that sank the Titanic. This sea captain, named W. Wood, served on the SS Etonian, a British merchant ship, and had a passion for photography. Fortunately, he had his camera on hand and managed to capture the immensity of that iceberg. The really interesting part is that Captain Wood wrote down the exact coordinates of the iceberg, which coincided almost exactly with the place where the Titanic crashed and sank, killing 1,522 people. Upon arriving in New York, Captain Wood shared the photo and sent a copy to his great-grandfather with a letter stating that this iceberg was the cause of the Titanic disaster. On the photo, he wrote in bold black ink, "Iceberg taken by Captain Wood SS. Etonian, in 41 degrees 50 minutes north latitude and 49 degrees 50 minutes west longitude on April 12 at 4 p.m. Although other photos of icebergs have been seen in the Titanic's route over the past century, what makes Captain Wood's photo intriguing is that the shape of the iceberg closely resembles eyewitness drawings and descriptions of the iceberg that sealed the fate of the Titanic in its tragic collision at 10:20 p.m. on April 14, 1912, sinking within 3 hours. Third-class passengers. This next photo offers a glimpse into the experience of third-class passengers, also known as foredeck passengers, settling in aboard the Titanic. On the Titanic, third-class passengers shared communal bathrooms, ate together in dedicated dining facilities, and slept in staterooms with 4 occupants per room. Despite being considered third class, the accommodations provided to these passengers on the Titanic were remarkably good compared to what they were used to. Although the space allotted to steerage passengers was relatively small and they had access to very few amenities, a notable benefit to them was that they were provided with meals, a significant improvement compared to many other steamships of the time, where they were provided with meals. He expected the foredeck passengers to bring their own food. Although the third-class cabins were in less preferred areas of the Titanic, close to the noise of the engines, they had amenities such as running water and electricity. Single men were accommodated at the front of the ship, while single women and families were in the stern, where there were larger cabins for them. Although the cabins, although spacious for the time, were irregularly shaped to fit the shape of the ship. In addition to the cabins, there was a common room for third-class passengers to gather, read and play, and although they couldn't use the gym or pool, they hosted their own parties. Most of the 700 steerage passengers were immigrants seeking a future in the United States via the Titanic. Unfortunately, many did not make it, as only 25% survived the tragedy, and only a small portion of that group were men. Titanic life jackets. This photo is part of an album of a passenger who left the Titanic before her sinking. The Titanic had life jackets for everyone, made of canvas and cork, but they were fragile in design and tied with ropes. Tragically, as the Titanic was sinking, some passengers jumped into the water and the impact left them unconscious due to the design of the vests. Many drowned or suffered injuries. After World War II, the design of cork vests was improved. Although there were problems, original Titanic vests still exist and have achieved high prices at auction. The captain and the quartermaster of the Titanic. This photo shows Captain Edward J. Smith, the British captain of the Titanic, with the ship's quartermaster, Hugh Walter Mackelrath. The image was taken by a passenger who disembarked in Queenstown, Ireland, 3 days before the tragic sinking. Sadly, both lost their lives in the disaster. 3 days into his first voyage from Southampton, Captain Smith followed his Sunday routine, inspecting the ship and conducting a church service. As night fell on April 14, 1912, the temperature dropped and the surface of the Atlantic appeared calm, making it difficult to detect icebergs in the region in spring. Despite the conditions, Captain Smith maintained top speed, confident that the crew could react quickly to icebergs. However, on the night of April 14th, he was not on the bridge when the ship struck an iceberg. Upon learning of the damage, he asked Thomas Andrews, the designer of the Titanic, to evaluate it, who determined that the ship would sink. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15th, the Titanic suffered her tragic fate. Captain Smith was last seen on the bridge, although reports of saving a child were largely dismissed. His body was never found. Opinions about Smith's actions vary. Some criticize him for not slowing down, while others say he thought he could maneuver. His absence on the bridge during the encounter with the ice field is also questioned. From the tragic fate of the Titanic, one of the most famous shipwrecks in history, it takes us to another underwater incident, which left an indelible mark on the collective memory: the unfortunate accident of the Ocean Gate submarine. The entire world watched as a timer was placed on the imminent deaths of 5 passengers of the Ocean Gate submarine, as the vessel was lost in the immensity and depth of the ocean. The submarine was reported to have only approximately 96 hours of oxygen supply, although many news channels and social media pages were doing a live countdown of those hopeful 96 hours. When the clock hit 0, all rescue missions stopped and ceased, as the infamous Ocean Gate expedition made a regrettable statement regarding the deaths of the 5 passengers, including the company's CEO. Stockton Rush. All things considered, the rescue mission was a race against time, and there are now recent reports suggesting that the outcome of the mission was predetermined or manipulated from the beginning. The submarine was in poor condition, and there was clear disregard for safety protocols, which led to its conviction long before the expedition began. In situations where you can infect others, It is not just about yourself, but about collective well-being, prioritizing health in general. Not to mention, the conditions around the rescue mission were also extremely difficult. Rescuers were concerned that the submarine would run out of oxygen before the designated 96 hours, given the number of passengers, and as many news reports relentlessly reported that the rescue mission also had the same number of hours to locate the missing submarine. The experts had to give their opinion on the matter. According to Titanic's submarine and expedition experts, rescuers had approximately 76 hours to locate the missing Ocean Gate ship. Even then, the chances of finding the passengers alive were quite slim. As diabolical as it may seem, the passengers had no way out. It's true that any human who tried to swim 4 kilometers below the ocean's surface would be crushed by the ocean pressure. But humans tend to fight for their survival, right? Although it may be hard to believe, the 5 passengers were trapped inside the submarine, meaning that the boat's door could only be opened from the outside. It's not difficult to understand what that means. Even if the submarine were found at the bottom of the ocean with the passengers alive, U.S. Coast Guard rescue operations would be virtually useless due to the great depth of the ocean. The submarine would become trapped in the mud on the seabed, making it immobile and inaccessible. We would have no choice but to leave the passengers where they were found. Tim Malton, an expert on the sinking of the Titanic, was also not optimistic about rescue missions. Since Moulton knew the location of the ship's wreckage well, he offered a more realistic perspective on the missing submarine. He suggested that due to the submarine's poor design and ocean pressure, it is likely that the vessel was damaged and water entered. Finding the submarine was like searching for a needle in a haystack, and besides, submarines couldn't tow it to the ocean's surface. Boats at the bottom of the ocean are difficult to handle. Furthermore, we know more about the surface of the moon than about our own ocean surface. Therefore, many experts considered the rescue mission to be an illusion, or a hoax. When Ocean Gate launched the submarine into the ocean, they knew that if something went wrong, there was no turning back. The company made sure passengers repeatedly signed liability waiver forms. It seems that Ocean Gate sent its passengers into the ocean with no intention of helping them. Additionally, a letter written in 2018 by industry experts revealed significant concerns about the Titan submarine and its expeditions to the wreckage of the Titanic. The Marine Technology Society, a marine think tank, criticized Ocean Gate, the company behind the Titan submarine, for its experimental approach and lack of independent evaluation by industry regulators. They questioned whether the Titan should have been evaluated by industry advisors or risk regulators. The society expressed displeasure with Ocean Gate's claims about meeting safety standards set by DNVGL, a recognized classification society. However, it has now been revealed that Ocean Gate never sought certification from this organization. In an unpublished interview, Ocean Gate CEO Stockton Rush described the Titan as a submarine customized to explore the wreck of the Titanic, noting its lightness and maneuverability. Ocean Gate justified its decision not to pursue certification by arguing that it does not adequately address the human factor and could slow innovation. Although the Titan's certification status remains a mystery, a CBS News reporter revealed that the waiver document he signed made clear that the submarine was experimental and did not have regulatory approval or certification. Ocean Gate faced accusations of neglecting safety protocols and conducting inadequate testing before the tragedy. David Lockridge, the company's director of marine operations, raised concerns about the submarine's readiness and capabilities. However, his concerns were silenced and a legal battle ensued. This situation exposed Ocean Gate's security protocols, but the result was kept secret. The revelations surrounding the Titan submarine raise questions about safety regulation and the relationship between innovation and industry standards in commercial submersibles. Although the implications are profound, the report is essential to understanding the causes of the tragedy. Ocean Gate was aware of the deficiencies in its security, but decided to proceed with the operation despite the warnings. The submarine's declared ability to reach a depth of 4 kilometers turned out to be false, which could already be inferred from Lockridge's report. Although they could have used a safe viewing window for that depth, they chose to minimize costs and use materials whose reliability was in question. Despite receiving warnings from the Marine Technology Society, OceanGate ignored the concerns of submersible experts and continued with its experimental approach, which poses serious consequences for the industry. OceanGate ignored major problems in previous expeditions and continued sending the Titan submarine to extreme depths for which it was not prepared. Even well-known presenters and scriptwriters experienced thruster control failures and communication problems during their voyages with OceanGate. Industry experts, such as James Cameron, criticized the submarine's design and pointed out the company's lack of certification and compliance with safety controls. Despite the warnings, OceanGate persisted in its actions, arguing that standardized security testing hindered technological innovation. This highlights the company's negligence and disregard for expert reports and security controls. Rush has long rejected expert opinions questioning the OceanGate expeditions as irrelevant. On his blog, he argued against involving third parties in the innovation process and was reluctant to allow an outsider to dismantle his creation. Despite this, OceanGate has carried out unique and fascinating activities, piquing the interest of Titanic enthusiasts. However, these opportunities have been reserved for expert researchers and explorers. Our missions to recover the wreckage of the Titanic were also challenging and dangerous. Although it made sense for experts to dive into the ocean depths, turning it into a public business only pursues profit, without taking into account safety protocols. Furthermore, the expeditions that did consider safety also faced serious problems. It is important to note that the submarine in question is not a standard construction, as it is not made of materials such as high-strength steel or titanium. In 2000, an incident occurred that bears similarities to the recent tragedy and could have been an indication of what was to come. American journalist Michael Gillen shared his chilling experience of being trapped in a submersible near the wreckage of the Titanic, in the same place where another tourist submersible disappeared in the past. During the dive, they encountered a powerful underwater current that trapped the submersible in the propeller, while huge fragments of the Titanic fell on them. The Russian pilot, with exceptional skills, did everything he could to free them, and after almost an hour of anguish, they finally managed to free themselves and float safely. Gillen, who was afraid he would not survive, deeply sympathizes with the 5 people missing from the tourist submersible and hopes they return safely. Additionally, Gillen points out that the submersible he was in was a sturdy and reliable vessel, designed specifically for scientific research in extreme conditions on the high seas. Interestingly, the recent failed tourist trip to the Titanic led to the discovery of the remains of the Titan at the bottom of the ocean, now in pieces. Dr. Gillen and Tyson raise questions about the suitability of the Titan submersible, and question whether such a risky dive should have been allowed to take place. They highlight the importance of having well-built and certified vessels to explore the deep sea. The contrast between the reliable Mero 1, designed for scientific purposes, and the safety concerns surrounding the Titan, raises questions about its suitability for tourist expeditions. Both experts advocate for a pause in Titanic expeditions until we better understand the Titan's flaws and the importance of ocean safety. In addition, they emphasize the respect due to the Titanic wreckage as a final resting place for many people and the need to exercise caution and gather information before venturing into the deep sea again. OceanGate's abrupt decision to suspend all operations has left everyone in suspense without further details. Opinions on new findings related to OceanGate and its submersibles are invited to share in the comments.